Hi there. Let me take a long sip of water because it's time for the coach's playbook. Today is Tuesday, June 29th. We're joined by Carol again. Carol, thanks so much for joining us. Uh,
You're
today,
welcome.
today we're talking about the underside of trading, so to speak.
Mm.
We're talking about market manipulation, but more specifically, we kind of want to have a little salon here to discuss whether all the madness that's going on with GameStop and I nearly called it Game Stonk right there, and I would not have liked that. AMC, basically the meme stocks, is what's going on Reddit. Does that constitute market manipulation? There's some divergent thoughts on that, and I don't want a Reddit mob. So let us say first that there's definitely worse manipulation. So how about we start off with Dan, since you kind of picked this topic for us today. I'll let you get first dibs. But first, Mick, trader shout out? Perhaps not.
Sorry, my
Oh,
Uh-oh.
looks like we lost him.
Reddit has shut down Mick.
I'm having technical issues with audio.
No problem. Well, once Mick comes back, we'll talk to him. But Mick, why don't you mute yourself and we'll talk to Dan for now. So Dan, get us kicked off here.
Absolutely. Well, this last year, I would say, about 6 months or so, all of a sudden this idea of WallStreetBets and Reddit, which has been out there for years, right? Everyone's been talking about it. Everyone kind of thought it was slightly comical. And then we saw this AMC stock and GameStop and these crazy things starting to happen, right? You look at these stocks, they were questionable companies. They weren't going very far. Brick and mortar, that's not the way of 2021. And people started talking about it, and they recognized that firms were way short on these companies, and there was potential. If you could get enough people involved, you could run these prices up. Now, you've heard about all these things about short squeezes and this and that, and I think that's almost too granular for this topic. But essentially, when it comes to market manipulation, if you can band enough volume, it doesn't matter what product it is, if it's a stock or whatever the case may be, you can start to move the price of the market. A prime example everyone has seen is Wolf of Wall Street, Steve Madden. They cornered the market on Steve Madden, and then when they had enough shares and everyone was making money, they just dumped it, and extreme price swings. And when that starts to happen, it gets frightening. It's almost not too safe to be active in these products unless, you're on the winning side. And that's what we've really seen what's going on. Now it's happening. Wendy's is one of the products they're talking about. You've got AMC, you've got GameStop. Silver was something they were talking about for quite a bit, right? You got gold for a while was ripping higher and silver was lagging a little bit. Then you got palladium was getting involved. So you have so many different products across the entire spectrum of futures and stocks, and then Dogecoin, right? We can't forget cryptocurrencies. You've got so many things that everyone's running into. And the scary part is, and this is where I think you have to have some education, is eventually it's going to stop. And this concept of to the moon, get out of here with that. It's not going to work. When you have profits, if you've made 100% profit, that's freaking phenomenal. Take it. Don't sit there in these stocks and think you're going to continue to make money forever. These are businesses and companies and shares and futures markets that maybe aren't going to go to the moon. So lock in some profit.
Let me give a little bit more background before we throw it over to Carol and Hogue, because I don't know how much y'all were lurking on WallStreetBets. I was before this. So it used to be more people, and where the name kind of WallStreetBets comes from was more of they would buy. It would be people discussing their crazy ass out of the money, one day to expiration spy trades, right? Like just people rallying and cheerleading. The stock stuff is somewhat new, especially like this. And I just wanted to read a quote from back in February. This is from one of the EU's top financial regulators, just so we have a common definition here. This person said, discussing the opportunity to buy or sell shares of an issuer does not constitute market abuse. However, organizing or executing coordinated strategies to put or place orders at certain conditions and times to move a share's price could constitute market manipulation. So it's interesting. We haven't seen this before. Never before has a community that has 10 million members, I don't know how many people are actually trading the stocks, gone in to coordinate to move a stock price. Now, I think now they're very careful to avoid things that could be construed as, that's why they, it's all about, I like this stock, to the moon type stuff. That's kind of where we sit right now. So, Carol, you spent a lot of time, like the futures industry is not immune from this. There's been incredibly famous real life market manipulation in there. Famously, go Wikipedia, the Chicago onion affair back in the day, which is why we can't have delicious onion futures anymore. So, Carol, what are your thoughts on this or manipulation in general, or how you feeling?
Well, the definition that you just read made me think about something else that I was reading the other day. And it was about whether or not congresspeople, senators, I think Mike Pompeo was thrown in there, people in Washington who have access to information and trade off of it. Although I think in 2012, they changed the rules on that. But if you look at someone who sold a bunch of stock right before coronavirus hit the market and we broke severely, were they trading off of insider information, or were they just trading off of news stories that were floating out there and they decided to be cautious and just unload at the right time? So when you try and prove those types of things, it's not easy to show. So if you want to talk about Reddit as it's a group of people talking about stocks, is it harmless, or are they trying to band together to move the market in a way that would be, considered manipulation? I'm not sure if you could prove that, or if it would even be worth the time and energy to do so. But I love the whole Reddit thing. I love going on WallStreetBets every now and then just to read the crazy comments and to talk to other people, like the younger generation, mostly about it. I think it's amazing and dangerous, but amazing that there are so many opportunities for people to actually attempt to participate in so many different markets, like crypto and palladium, all the futures markets, stock markets. And I think Reddit helps create a community for that. But definitely it's a game. It's not investing, and it's, you don't want to be the last man standing. You're going to get hurt. And like Dan was saying, these are stocks that maybe you want to play with. You buy it, you hold it, you double your money, you get out, or you make 10 times, whatever it is that you're looking to do, you get out, because holding it is not going to work. And I just looking at stuff the other day, the people that are holding AMC, waiting for the big giant short squeeze that's going to push it to 100. It's like, okay, we've been talking about this for weeks. If you bought it at 20, just sell it at 60 and call yourself lucky. Holding it for that one, like, mother of all moves that you think is going to happen it's just a game you're playing to have fun. And if you can afford to lose that money, I guess go for it. But it certainly isn't investing.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point where even if these things go off on the mother of all moves, you still have to be one of the early people to sell it, right? Yeah. On the way down, there's not magically going to be people that are like, oh, AMC was at 5,000 and now it's at 2,000. What a deal. That's not how these things work, and they de-escalate rather quickly. You can look at previous crazy moves like that. What happened to Volkswagen, I think it was around 2008, 2009 or something like that, when Porsche pulled those shenanigans and it briefly became the most valuable company in the world. You still get hurt on the way down. So I think you have to think about your risk here. Hogue, give us some wisdom.
Absolutely. Where the danger is going to come in is if you are the last man in. You don't want to be the laggard long in this situation, because you were mentioning, Carol was mentioning that, this is the first time that we've had retail younger traders involved in the markets. And while they're having fun with this and maybe making some money, that when it comes apart, they're going to get hurt. And that's my main concern. You know, is it manipulation for a group of people to buy a stock in unison? I mean, if it's manipulation for retail traders, it's manipulation for professionals too, isn't it?
True. And
So,
there's a lot of professional institutions. I mean, anytime there's volatility like that, and I mean, the option, have you looked at the options on these companies? You know, the 1 week option premiums.
Not in depth, but a little bit, and it's outrageous.
It's
Crazy.
it's something to behold.
Yeah.
And why I bring this up, I think part of the reason if there's one thing that I would urge people that are in these stocks is I think that sometime I get the impression that they are taking a view of how long and short trades work that is not encompassing of everything. They say, oh, there's a lot of people still short, they're gonna have to do it. It's like, well, part of the reason this is higher is probably nobody's sitting in there, I hope, naked short these stocks. They're the people probably with these out of the money calls too, right? I mean, you got to assume that these people are hedged, and so you might be looking for something that's you think's going to happen that isn't the way it is. And so I think they've already won at this point, and I'm like, hell yeah, I love this stuff too, but just be careful. I'm shocked.
And I think it's important to recognize
this high.
You know, John made a good point. It's the younger people coming into this, and their knowledge of what they're actually engaging in is probably relatively limited. The idea of shorting a market, I would venture to guess a lot of the people that are jumping in and getting on, you know, Robinhood and buying their life savings worth of AMC doesn't understand what the concept of shorting is, right? Most people that get into this industry and you tell them you can short the market, the mindset, right? Well, we're trained to think you can't sell something you don't have. So they start not to understand really what that means. And so they always think there's going to be, if they're going to buy it, they think someone else already is selling it to them. And they think it's one for one when that's not always going to be the case. And then they start thinking that processing that this is an investment and this is not just a game. There are people that do this for a living, and they're dabbling. And some were winning. I would say seems like a lot have won. But I also know a lot that have been hurt and lost.
Yeah.
You know, and the whole knowledge thing, it's interesting too, because like my nephew and son, when they talk about this stuff, they just, you know, they're watching and dabbling, you know, like they have 20 shares of GameStop or something, but, you know, they call themselves apes and degenerates and junkies because that's how the people on Reddit refer to themselves, because they don't want to know the technicals. It doesn't matter if they understand what a naked short is, because all they care about is, I bought it, I refuse to sell it, I've got diamond hands, it's going to the moon, and I'm just going to wait for that day to happen, no matter what. So it's almost, you know, ignorance is bliss. And like Hogue was saying, it's ignorance is bliss until the market starts moving against you. And then there's a vacuum and a downdraft that you are trapped in, and there's no way out. And you just lost everything. So
and I don't want to be some jackass gatekeeper here, you know, like stay out of it. Hogue can testify, as can everyone here who spent time on the floor. I didn't, and I can still testify to it, is there were a lot of apes and degenerates down there.
absolutely.
There was no shortage, but so you can be those things and be a professional, but it's always good to know what you're getting yourself into. Mick, have you figured out your audio visual issues, or do we have to send over the stage crew?
No, I'm good. I'm good. Sorry for the little hiccup there. You know, if we're kicking it over to me, I'll just come out and say I'm not too passionate about the Reddit stuff or these meme stocks. I think there's a lot of, you know, the demographics on Reddit, which is something I haven't used other than to get a little inspiration for furniture and design for some things around the house.
Are you talking about Wayfair or Reddit? That's a very
maybe
interesting.
Oh, you know what? There you go.
Yeah,
Sorry.
no,
So I don't
sorry.
use Reddit. I really, you know, I find the excuse me. I find the meme stock talk a little interesting, but you know, it's not my cup of tea. I think that, there's going to be a lot of people. I know the Reddit demographic is mainly, males 18 to 30 years old. And I think there's going to be a lot of learning experiences for people who have been participating in, what they've been following on Reddit. I think, speculating in stocks is one thing, investing in stocks is another thing. I don't like speculating in stocks. It takes a huge amount of capital to get bang for your buck unless you're using something like options to add leverage. I like investing in stocks, and I don't like it getting caught up in, the noise of hearsay and what's thrown out there, because that kind of stuff can change, at a moment's notice. And, you guys know me, I like, being able to measure my risk, and you can't measure your risk on that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Talking about people not taking profits when they're, up 3 times on their initial investment in something, like Carol said, you get lucky, pull the trigger, take some windfall profits. One thing I think about with, so a lot of younger people in that 18 to 30 year age group, it's very easy to get a brokerage account where you can, trade stocks, invest in stocks. It doesn't take a large amount of capital. And while we've seen a huge break in the barriers to entry with futures over the last decade or more, when things have gone from the pits to the screens, you can open a futures trading account with a small amount of capital, probably far too small amount of capital as you should. But I still don't think that there's a lot of people that are in that age group, unless you have some prior experience, in Chicago or New York around some of these futures exchanges. I don't think people think to really, participate like they do with the stocks. So as far as, banding together and talking about, some of these markets, I know metals and silver, or gold and silver were brought up earlier. I think it's going to be much more difficult to, have any manipulation when you could have a large group of retail traders, but I don't think that there's a large group of retail traders that are using Reddit to try and do anything when you have,
There aren't. I would venture even that silver was always the odd thing out, and I think that was sort of like, what do you call it, a false flag or something. I think there's a certain group, who's almost as zealous as the apes and degenerates are, gold bugs and precious metal people, and I think they thought, they've been waiting for a squeeze in gold and silver since we were bartering pelts, and it'll still come, Zero Hedge. It'll still come. But I think they just took a flyer at it. I think they got a lot of hate. If you actually read the boards, it's like everyone's like, "You silver? We're trading silver now." It's like, get that boomer shit out of here.
Yeah, you think about the retail traders, and then you think about margin. I mean, margin on silver is pretty large. So the people, even though there is a low barrier to entry, and someone could open a futures account with $2,500, I mean, can you even trade some of these products that might be discussed? And if you were, you could easily get blown out in an hour in the morning if you're on the wrong side of the trade. So I don't really think that, that kind of stuff really translates to futures the same as it does to stocks.
I will say, and Carol, you might remember this. I've just heard stories about a guy in the bond pit way back in the day that was carrying about 20% of the entire bond positions in the whole world. And he was just moving the market all day long. He'd start buying it, run it up. It would run up. Everyone was buying or selling it off to him. And then he'd get up there and go, sell, run it back down. Now, I can't give too many specifics. It's been a while since I've heard this story, but I've heard from a few different people telling me this story about this day when someone had the bond market cornered and just manipulated it up and down all day long and was just raking in the cash.
I presume you're talking about 30-year bond futures on
Correct.
the run, or not 20% of the world bond thing.
No, right. Excuse me.
Just the open interest.
Yeah.
Probably Tom Baldwin.
I was going to say, outside of Baldwin, and even that there were quite a big handful of large traders back in the day. But to be able to move the entire market in that fashion seems unfathomable, maybe a bit of a stretch. But There was a group of traders called the Turtles that traded under, I can't remember the guy's name.
Splinter.
It might, no, no, but there were like 5 or 6 of them in the pit, and they all traded off of the same like technical analysis and philosophy. And maybe if they all band together, perhaps they could do something like that. I don't even know if Tom Baldwin could have done that. I mean, he was big, but
Let's
don't
just
know.
say for legal exposure here that Tom Baldwin did not
did
do
not
this.
do that.
Yes.
Good. I was also going to say just the margins on futures would prevent anyone, I think, any retail size traders banding together to try and manipulate any of them, even the smallest of the futures markets, which I don't know, might be lumber or milk or something. I don't know. But I don't think they'd be able to hold positions overnight or for a week, or it's just the margins are too high on futures. So.
Richard Dennis was the
Richard
turtle trader
Dennis.
guy.
Yes, exactly. That's what I was thinking of.
But back in 1973, there was a speculator by the name of Gene Cashman in grains.
Yeah.
That the reporting of positions was a little bit behind when the grain embargo against Russia ended, basically ending the gas crunch. He was reportedly long over positions in many different accounts, and it was, the ability to do that now is impossible because you have to be margined, right? By the time they knew of his positions, the positions he was in had already paid his margins.
Yeah. It's kind of like what happened with Black Friday too. It's questionable whether something like that could happen again just because people didn't know their positions, right? I've heard that's what like sort of really added fire to the sell-off. One last thing to say a topic that I would kind of want to throw around if anyone has a thought on it is, does anybody have any predictions as to what the SEC or something, do we see the SEC getting involved with this in some way? Do you think that they will actually, I'd argue it'd be pretty unpopular for them to kind of go after some 18-year-old, although we did have Deep Effing Value or whatever his name was testifying before Congress. Keith Gill, I believe. Do we see this, or will they go after, does anybody see any possible fallout from this?
It was close when this all first started happening. And I thought they'd be hopping on something relatively quickly. But now everyone kind of sees what's going on. And I think 99% of the world recognizes like, okay, if they have some legs when it comes to WallStreetBets and Reddits, there is something to what they're doing. It's pretty obvious that if you're heavy short of stock, and doesn't matter how big you are, if WallStreetBets starts talking about it, maybe you should just recognize that as maybe an indicator, maybe a leading indicator, maybe a secondary indicator to start to peel off some of that position. I think it will take a lot more hurt from the major institutions, the banks, to start to take some major hits before the SEC gets too heavy-handed.
I think the major institutions are going to figure out how to beat these guys at their own game before that happens.
I think you're right.
I have a quick question. So since all this Reddit stuff and the Wall Street bets, I mean, has this type of speculation become a little bit less of a shiny object to people out there since it started?
Not so much.
I think part of it, everyone had so much fun with GameStop, and that one, just went to the moon. But it feels like a lot of the other ones that they've tried to take a position on aren't paying off quite as lucratively for those people. So I think so far it's been a little less interesting, a little less of a shiny object. But if you read their comments and follow their stuff, they are not looking to walk away from this. They want to do more. So
GameStop is still trading at $210 as we speak, and it's been here for like a week. It's really a bizarre, it's kind of a stalemate at the moment. So we'll see where it goes next. So I think that this might be a good time to. I knew this conversation was going to run a little bit longer than usual because hot takes abound. But unless anyone has any final thoughts on it, I thought maybe Dan, I'd be interested to see how you could inspire us today.
I got a quote here, but I will say, you know, if you are interested, have fun with them. Don't get your shirt taken off your back, but because they are fun. I've dabbled in them too. It's fun to get involved. It's fun to watch those swings. Don't put your life savings on the line, but have fun with them for sure.
Sell some calls, buy some puts, please. Just way out. If it goes to the moon, you're not going to care about the way out of the money you put on GameStop. Like, you'll be good.
And that goes with my quote here. It comes from MF Munzager. I probably butchered that name. Manipulation can give you anything in life you want if you can afford it.
I need to look up this person to see what is going on with his worldview. But well, with that, don't engage in any manipulation this week, everyone. Have fun, stay safe, control your risk. Carol, always a pleasure. And Hogue, take us home.
Well, speculating. Never risk thy whole wad. Only use money you can afford to lose. Trade well, everyone.